as you can imagine, some friends have told me that last year I looked a lot more morose and morbid compared to this year.
Even though you say that?
Yeah, even though I'm physically a lot weaker now than before.
What was the change? What do you think was the change?
A couple of things, I think. A lot of it, I feel, had to do with the dignity of labor that even as I waste away whatever abilities that I've left, can be made into something useful, meaningful, and purposeful for somebody else. So the podcasts that I did, and none of it was solicited, it was just, again, just allowing people who come my way, old friends who reconnected 30, 40 years ago, to just walk with me, have conversations that one thing leads to another. You know, it's almost, it was very interesting to see how one conversation led to another. You know, it leads to a podcast with Singapore Hospice Council, a podcast with a funeral director talking about death. And that connection was a friend whom I've not seen for maybe a decade or so. We hadn't kept up, but he told one of his friends, his funeral director, and then she came my way, visited. We talked and said, hey, let's do a podcast on this. And so the day suddenly became meaningful and purposeful. I had a reason to get out of bed. I had to finish the article. I can't wait for the article to be published because that's a trial balloon for the book. And okay, he said that looks like there's some traction. Okay, write the book. Let poems, I'm gonna write. Dig through the photos, deep within me, find the words, give it to him. He meant, this word not so appropriate. Why you write like that? Can you write? How come your poems all rhyme like that one? You know, okay, a bit more sophistication lah. You know, and write in different languages, and then suddenly I felt, part of me felt alive again. Of course, it was frustrating trying to put pen to paper, not literally, but finding a different way, voice to text with my one thumb, and struggle, voice to text doesn't recognize the words because I wrote some of the poems in Singlish, some of it in Mandarin, Japanese, a mix of like rojak lah, some Malay, but largely in English. So life is a long way.
AI hasn't got smart enough for that yet.
It's still very bodoh lah. So in a way, I felt alive all over again.
I think what you said is so remarkable, the purpose.
Yeah.
In gerontology, and that's what attracted me from the voluntary work with the elderly. I think whatever time that's given, as you said, by God, right? So go with the flow, God decides, God has given. From a gerontology is how do we maximize the quality of life? Such a quality of life, and in aging process is about losses. So in a way, losses about physical ability, losses in the positions that you hold, a lot of losses, and sometimes losses of love. But with that losses, what is it that we can find? And that has to really go deep inside. What is it that gives you the most joy? And sometimes it's about discovering your gifts that you have. And gifts are different, right? From your qualifications and degrees. It's innate in us.
Useless, totally.
Yes. It is innate in us that when we discover that gift, we are able to make that into a purpose.
I mean, it's not rocket science, but going through it and realizing that for yourself is a separate story. It's almost like learning how to live again, I think, and this phrase about, I saw you had one photograph and behind it was living well and leaving well.
Yes.
I think that resonates. And you're absolutely right. I think, I mean, there's still good and bad days, but to think that I still have it in me to make a tiny contribution, whether it is having the proceeds of my book go to the Motor Neuron Disease Association, pieces of writing that I put out there with the help of friends, obviously, and people telling me that spoke to them, it resonated, made a difference, it made them think, gave me a purpose and a reason to carry on. But I don't know when that will stop. You know, the day where that's it. I shudder to think about that, but I shall not waste my time thinking about things that I have little, if any, control over.
I think what you're doing right now, just being in the moment, going with the flow.
Absolutely, going with the flow.
Yes, that's the best that you can give to yourself.
Yeah.
Whee Jim, you shared earlier on about how you found purpose in the writing. In doing this, and which was, it took a toll on you physically, but it gave you immense joy that you could get the word out there.
Also emotional processing to cry, break down. Like a woman, I'm sorry to be sexist, no, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry.
No, but that's being human.
Human.
Yes, processing it. It's never a linear path, right?
Yes.
It's never a linear path. You mentioned that you hope that these words would also find its way to your daughter as she grows up. She enters different phases of her life.
Yeah.
Would you like to share more about that?
Swapna, sometimes you want to have conversations, but for whatever reason you can't have them. It's either too difficult, the other party is not emotionally able to process it, doesn't have the capacity, I don't have the right words. So you turn to other forms of expression, the hope that the message will get to them later on. So it's exactly what I've done and continue to do. I've written 7 personal letters to my daughter, covering major milestones like find a partner, your first job, how to process grief, not as a you must do this, you should do this, more as a this was my own journey, walks and everything, the mistakes I made, and what it's as well. Because each and every single one of us, we are made differently, we're wired differently. God designed us to be different, right? So for what it's worth. In this season, I've also accepted all the offers to do podcasts, to write newspaper articles, to write articles for magazines. They could be along the spiritual or secular lines. In the hope that, very selfish reasons, one day when my daughter is ready, and in all likelihood I will not be around on earth at least, that at least I preserve some voice that goes to so I want to encourage people out there who are struggling with finding the right words to say, finding the right platform, medium, what have you, the right opportunity. think just start. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. And in my case, I got a lot of help from friends, family all around me to make all the books, newspaper articles, letters, podcasts possible. I'm also working on my second book. It's a collection of photographs that I took while I was more able-bodied, and many of them were adventures that I had with my daughter. So they accompanied by text, some poems, some memories, and a foreword that talks about my relationship with my dad. Because my dad was a camera repairman. I did not share his passion for photography at all. Right? It's only in hindsight. They like to say that hindsight is 20/20, right? Perfect hindsight. That I was so immature, perhaps, or I failed to appreciate what my dad was doing, and maybe at a higher level, the art of photography, how we can capture moments, stories, and they can weave together to tell a certain narrative of life. I realized that too late. Yeah, so I'm dedicating my next book, maybe that's my final book, to my dad, and writing a foreword that will also form part of that collection or constellation of materials that I leave perhaps as my tiny legacy for not only my daughter but for anyone who's interested to read.
Certainly. When I really, deeply pray and wish that it will find her at the right time, that it would give her the guidance and the love and support. Yeo Whee Jim, you also mentioned in how you had friends and families, and along the way they journeyed with you and they provided you the help that you needed on this very difficult journey of life. Do you think there's more that as a society we can do to support individuals who are going through this and caregivers who are providing end of life care? Is there more we can do?
You know how in civil service college when we ask this question, right? You immediately do a 2x2 matrix and say, we should continue to do more of what we have already been doing, cut back, anything new, anything that came in mind. Okay, I'm going to chart that out. And one thought comes to mind, and I think it's exactly these conversations that we're having. I've already started palliative conversations about my palliative care way ahead in anticipation, right? Because I think when the last time I checked, that was a certainty. It's just a matter of time. So,
isn't it a certainty for everyone?
Yeah, it is. And how can, in true blue Singaporean must be prepared, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So why not, as a first step, everyone, we should be very comfortable talking about death. And not only death as a sort of definitive final endpoint, but the journey towards that endpoint. And for those of us who have a religion, believe in afterlife, the life after that, we should be entirely comfortable. It's not a theoretical conversation. It is a conversation about something very real. And so with that in mind, how do you then live your life? Even if you're able-bodied and you're not sick, right? How do you live your life with intention, with purpose, so as to accomplish all those things that you want to accomplish right before you meet your maker, if I may. And I'm encouraged, and this journey of mine has been many losses but many gains as well. I'm encouraged by how people like you, Swapna, and other professionals, if I may, that are helping to jumpstart these conversations.
Thank you.
And I think that's incredibly powerful. The realization, as I mentioned many times, that not everyone has a tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next Christmas. And how do you make every single day that's given to you and what's left count? You want to live a life of regrets? Or do you want to live a life where you are constantly challenging yourself, constantly asking that, is this what I really want to do? Is this not only about me, but something far larger than yourself? And you mentioned this a few times, Swapna, right? What it means to be human. And that means having relationships, building relationships. And as an extreme introvert, I think this phase of my life has been very humbling. I proclaim very loudly that I'm an extreme introvert. I used to take solo trips, did solo walks. All my activities were solo, Went to the gym, swimming, stretching, everything can be done alone. Ironically, in this phase, I do look forward to meetups, the conversations that help me reframe things, help me uncover opportunities for doing something meaningful, no matter how small or tiny, or just reminiscing. And to also allow, I'm really surprised at this phase of my life, I'm still making new connections and making new friends. That's really so humbling. There's so much that I don't know, I've not done, and it's terrible to be living the rest of your life in resentment, anger, bitterness. It's a complete waste of time. And the sooner you get out of it, this is a message I'm telling myself too, the sooner I get out of this, the better it is. Not only myself, but for the people around me.
And I just want to end off on that word. It's about connections. It is about human connections. And I think it's so important when we go through experiences. The connections are what that makes us stronger. Really, if I look at society and family, and it's the network. How in a network, we are definitely a little stronger with the human connection. That's really hard to harm. And so spaces for conversations. Spaces, if we are a pragmatic society, then let's be pragmatic and let's talk about this eventual journey and how we can be better with that. Embracing the spirituality of our faith on that journey. But we are not having enough conversations. You're absolutely right. And without that enough conversation, having that kind of self-awareness, what can you then do for us without you dwelling deep in and figuring it out for yourself.
Absolutely. So thanks, Swapna.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Signing off, Kampong Palliative Care.